Nice to be back. Followers of my channel will know that I've been pretty quiet for the last couple of months, almost 2 months. Yeah, health problems necessitated a hernia operation. So there was the preview, the surgery, and then the convalescence. And yeah, it takes a bit out of you. So no videos. So this is my first video bouncing back, and I'm going to do a ranking video and do my top 10 for 2012. So it might well have a few errors in it, just bear with me, but I'm going to get on with the show, so to speak, and I'm going to first of all start with those honourable mentions. 12 my favourite albums from that year. Amazing to consider it's a decade ago. Let's start with the honourable mentions. First I'm going to refer to The Big Inner by Matthew E. White. Very impressive album by this New Orleans based guy. R&B, Tropicalia, and a bit of 70s sci-fi rock. That's Why God Made the Radio. Beach Boys released this one. It's got their very distinctive sort of harmony sounds. Probably lacks those killer tracks, but it's still pretty impressive. Next up on my honourable mentions is Push and Shove by No Doubt. This is a decade after their hugely successful album Rocksteady, which I really loved. This is more of the same, really. It's still got that nice ska reggae beat to keep you on your toes, and of course Gwen Stefani once again out front with the Vokes. Then Love the Giant, which is a collaboration between David Byrne and St. Vincent, aka Annie Clark. I did a review for this on my channel. Very impressive collection of songs, so check that one out. There'll be a link in the description. Lockdown by Dr. John. Really enjoyed this album. Louisiana blues, of course, with a bit of bio-funk and a touch of psychedelic rock in there as well. And then Port of Morrow by a band called The Shins. Alt rock, but it's quite polished and very enjoyable. Bob Dylan's Tempest, I have to confess I only heard this once, so it's an honourable mention but couldn't get to the 10. Then we got The Hipsters by Deacon Blue, the Scottish rock band. They're first for a number of years. They've got a great sort of sound, very, very sort of classic rock in the 90s style. And then Wrecking Ball by Bruce Springsteen. You will notice there's a Clemens on the credits here, but it's not Clarence, of course, who's passed on, but it's a cracking album. And then quickly, Mystic Pinball by John Hyatt. Grown to love this guy, sort of rock from the centre of America. It's very much tasteful country rock style. And then Talking Book, which is a collection of Stevie Wonder covers by Macy Gray. She adds her own stamp to his songs, and some of it's very nice. And then finally on those honourable mentions, John Mayer's Born and Raised. Early albums by Mayer I loved. This one not so much. It's got a more of a country sort of stance to it, which takes a little bit longer for me to get into. But those are the honourable mentions. Of honourable mentions, let's get into the top 10. And at number 10, Not Your Kind of People by Garbage. This is their 6th authoring, but the first for 17 years. And a whopping 17 years on from their huge debut success. Alt rock, well, what is alt about? Well, for this band, it's rock sophistication behind a powerhouse vocal. Their music still focused primarily on pain and darkness, so much so that it occasionally feels a bit rote, as on the melodramatic and predictable I Hate Love. But as a passage, however, it gels, and if you're a Garages fan, you'll purr. The title track and Beloved Freak are the highlights. And highlighted tracks, I'll try and get them in the description of YouTube. Number 9 is Sunken Condos by Donald Fagan. This is his 4th offering, 3 previous solo albums, The Night Fly, Kamikare and Morph the Cat. 24 years between those 4 albums. But Sunken Condos arrived just 6 years after Morph the Cat. And I have got a review of Morph the Cat and Nightfly on my channel. Again, description link in the description. The press release suggested this album begins a new chapter in the creative evolution of Fagan. I'm searching for that change, and you tell me when you get to listen to it. Simultaneously taut and lush jazz funk pop, a mix of upbeat and loose tempos, and gorgeous guitars, askew riffs for licks, and shades of brass slide in and out of view. And there's some shimmering electric piano underlying the Art Deco vibe, where the Nightfall watches the world through a cocktail glass darkly. So what's new and different? Well, nothing really. Thank goodness, I say. Van Gogh repeated painting self-portraits, didn't he? Pick of the tracks is Miss Marlene and the really catchy memorabilia. Get to listen to it. Again, link in the description. And this is a solo album by Jeff Lynne called Long Wave. Jeff Lynne, of course, the creator and centerpiece of Electric Light Orchestra. Jeff's getting on a bit, but he decided to do a covers album, and he illustrates his love of pop songs from the 50s with those rich selection of classics that he would have heard on the long wave radio wavelength. That's why it's called Long Wave. Way back when I listened to Long Wave, but it's a cracking set. Highlights Running Scared, Beyond the Sea, which of course was Bobby Darin, and Let It Rock by Chuck Berry, and the classic So Sad from the Everlys. Nice selection. And at 7 we've got The Duke by Joe Jackson, and his appreciation of Duke Ellington here, and he's reinterpreting a number of his compositions in styles that stray somewhat from the original arrangements. It's very classy though, and the one example is a song dominated by Steve Vai, electric guitar player, called Isfahan. It sounds like a demonstration of some gizmo being sold at guitar centres. And there's also a track called It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. Tremendous stuff. Wrestles with both swing and electronics. No clear victor there. And the highlighted tracks, of course, is Fagan and Caravan. 6 is Away from the World by the Dave Matthews Band. This is alt rock with world additions and that southern state feel with horns and strings prevalent throughout. This is their 8th album, and it reunites the band with Steve Willywhite, the man who helmed their big major label hits of the 90s. For Away in the World, 2012's long gestating sequel to the 09 selection Big Whiskey and the Groove Crux King, which I absolutely adored. First time Lillywhite's worked since the 1998 Before These Crowded Streets, another album that I do love. And there's no denying he's the best producer for the band, articulating their elasticity with clarity and reining in their excesses. To the tracks, If Only is underpinned by some seductive soul groove. Rooftop carries a big pop hook, while the sex romp Belly Belly Nice evokes memories of an older track, Ants Marching. There's no real attempt to broaden their audience, nor is there the self-conscious stretching that marked some of Matthews' 200s albums. Matthews, however, is content writing songs about his family, his wife, the world, and life as he approaches middle age. And he's happy to consolidate the Dave Matthews Band strengths. Excellent album. I've also got a long review of this, link in the description. And this is the debut album by Alabama Shakes called Boys and Girls. They're fronted by one Brittany Howard, and she's like an earthy tornado, particularly her stage presence, and she basically presents a sort of garage soul delivery and gives the band a very distinctive sound with a wide repertoire of music styles. You've got a bit of rock, a bit of funk, a bit of soul, blues, and of course that southern style rock. American roots music for certain, grounded in the 60s, but with the notion of blues and soul, and it's all filtered through the prism of 70s classic rock. It's dynamic. Brittany isn't alone, no. Heath Togg tears some great gnarled riffs out of his guitar, while the rhythm section of Zach Cockrell and Steve Johnson hit the downbeat with a brutal force. All of this moulds into a terrific debut. The tracks to look out for are Hang Loose and Be More. Boys and Girls, debut, Alabama Shakes. You must get to listen to it. And another one which I've reviewed more fully. It's called Bangar, and it's by Patti Smith. 8 years since her last Tramping, original material that is, 11th offering overall. I really got off on the right track with her, with Horses and the follow-up, but since then she's rather drifted away from my listening. But I'm glad I've checked this one out. It marries together various forms of literary expression with rock and pop in an iconic assemblage. Collaborators, familiar people, guitarist Lenny Kaye, drummer J.D. Doherty, bassist Tony Sharahan, and also guest guitar player Tom Verlaine from television. And her children are on this album as well, and she has a guitarist Jack Petrocelli and the Italian band Casa del Vento, and there's even an appearance by Johnny Depp. Album is saturated with poetry, sung or spoken. Maria, terrific song, full of passion and a highlight. And Nine Doors, it's a bit like Nine Doors. Patti's outstanding vocals throughout, and the religious imagery of Constantine's dream, and nearly 10 minutes that climaxes the album. And she also throws in a cover at the end of After the Gold Rush, which is pretty classy, and has a children's choir chipping in on the chorus. So as I said, best tracks, Amerigo, April Fool and Maria. This is a 5-star piece of work by Patti Smith, and it's called Bangar. Third selection in my top 10 now is Sonic Kicks by Paul Weller. It's his 11th solo album. It follows on from the immaculate 22 Dreams and Wake Up the Nation. He's 30 years on, would you believe it, from a town called Malice. Who can ever forget that appearance on Top of the Pops way back when? This selection is once again a psychedelic kaleidoscope of pop made by a man always interested in filtering the past in his own way. And that puts Weller head and shoulders above most for his experimentation and commitment to constantly developing as an artist. Sonic Kicks fizzes and spits from its first track, Green, blasting off with a synthesizer that recalls the motoric rhythms of New, as well as the drone that starts The Human Leaves Love Action. Then we whirl into a world of vocal echoes, garbled lyrics about secret guides and quiet times, and stereo whooshies through the headphones. Other top tracks, Dragonfly and Around the Lake, are similarly propulsive and sci-fi driven with drum beats and friendly sound effects. And then we get into the weirder stuff. The instrumental Sleep of the Serene is a little bit like a 1960s movie, full of electronic burbles and strings that get progressively strange. Twilight is 18 seconds of metallic clatter, and then Drifters arrives with a shadowy Sylvie Apple's bass line and chunky guitars. And Weller finding his way back home as a mysterious voice calls him on. It's terrific pop, this, Paul, but it's not as we know it. Best tracks, Dragonfly, By the Waters, which is beautiful, and Paper Chase. That's Sonic Kicks, full album review, as I say in the description. Number 2 choice, Van Morrison, Born to Sing, No Plan B. If you follow my ranking videos, you'll know that virtually every release by Morrison ends up in the top 10. This was recorded live in Belfast in the studio, features a 6-piece band of musicians and Morrison on vocals, piano, guitar, and also some alto sax, which I really loved. 10 originals. The album's themes are typical, and some of the songs reflect on the current worldwide financial crisis, which was prevalent in 2012. Tracks to look out for, Mystic of the East, and my favourite, a 9-minute rendition of Going Down to Monte Carlo. It's absolutely superb. And so to my number 1. My number 1 album for 2012 is One Day I'm Going to Soar by Dexys. You will know them as Dexys Midnight Runners, but a quarter of a century on from Don't Stand Me Down in the late 80s, and Roland decided to drop the Midnight Runners, and what a gem he's brought to the table here. And they hit the ground running. There's so much personality, poetry, vulnerability and resilience here that most other records sound like dry runs by comparison. There's a narrative, autobiographical thread throughout the songs, which traces Roland's maturing from doubt and over-analysis in the tracks Now and Lost, through relationship traumas, in it capable of love, to epiphanies of individuality and self-acceptance. Catch Free and the beautiful monologue, It's Okay, John Joe. There are moments of wry, poignant insight, and Roland with his he said, she said dialogue with Madeline Highland is both candid and comedic, and certainly a highlight. There's rousing refrains and the chant from the band, Attack Attack, and romantic uplifting songs as well. Catch She's Got a Wiggle, which is a sexy and yearning type of song, reminiscent of Al Green as it shuffles through the rhythm. So what can I say? Absolutely brilliant. Favourite tracks, listen to all of it. So that's it. That's my top 10 for 2012. I'm hoping to maybe catch up by the end of the year, health permitting. Hope you enjoyed it. Bit long as usual, but trying to make up for lost time.